Hi, this will be the first in a series of videos about looking back at space cases, kind of like what I did with Animorphs, but with space cases, which, even though I love the Animorphs books more, the space cases show I like a lot more than the Animorphs show. And I want to say right up front, was a co-creation of Bill, I'm going to say Mummy, and Peter A. David. And I want to say that up front because when I wrote about my love for space cases on Medium and my blog, I completely left out uh, Peter David, and now he follows me on Twitter. I'm not sure why, but I definitely want. I mean, he's the co-creator. He should get co. I think it was. I don't know why I forgot to include him, but I am sorry that I did, and so I wanted to do that right away. Tonight, I'll go through the pilot episode, the unaired pilot, and then the first three episodes, and I'll probably continue to do four at a time, um, going forward. And yeah, so I'll just get right into it. The pilot episode is called "Breath of a Salesman," and I don't think the breath actually played much of a big role. He's shown toward the beginning chewing something, maybe it's gum, maybe it's food, but it makes his breath very bad, at least in the first couple of scenes. It doesn't really go anywhere. But the idea is, it's not like an origins episode like the first episode is. They're already out there and they come across this salesman and he boards the ship. He tries to, he tries to buy Radu is what he tries to do. He tries to trade Radu for, and I haven't explained who Radu is because this is a middle type episode, not an origins episode. So, but I'll get to who Radu is. He wants Radu because Andromedans, which is what Radu is, are very strong. And one thing about Radu in this episode, in most of the series, his ears, which he's got super hearing and super strength, those are Radu's Andromedan traits. The ears are spiral in the most of the series, but in the pilot, perhaps, I don't know why, but he's given more bat ears, giant bat ears, which makes sense for excellent hearing. Looks kind of funny. His wig is also more hairband than, I guess his wig is hairband in the rest of the series too, but it's not as wild, and his wig for the most of the series is more metal, and his wig in the pilot episode is more mullet. There are plenty of, Catalina's wig is not the rainbow bob of the majority of the series. It's more of a 80s punk rock, I guess 90s too, but this was mid-90s that this happened, so it was probably based in 80s, and I really liked it. The Krista looks more like a spider, and Thelma looks like the robot in, I think it's Metropolis, but also the actor, and they're all the same actors except for Davenport, and I'll get to Davenport, but the actor playing Thelma has her hair in a bun, but you can see her hair, and the Krista, we find out later in the series, is part machine, part living matter, and maybe Thelma is too, because she's part of the Krista, but a robot having nice silky hair like that she can put into a bun is interesting. But again, it was the pilot episode. The whole look of the show is dramatically different. The uniforms are different in the main series, and the set seems smaller. It's cavernous in the pilot episode compared to the kind of intimate hallways and rooms in the main series. But the salesman comes aboard. He tries to trade Radu for an engine extension that could jolt them, shorten their 7-year journey back to the school by a massive amount. And so they're tempted, but they don't want to sell Radu. But there's a boy robot with the salesman who requests that the salesman takes Thelma because he likes Thelma. I don't know why or what he intends romantically with Thelma, but they are a lot more willing to give up Thelma than they are Radu. They don't want to give up Radu, and they try to get out of it, but apparently the Salesman Guild is very rough people, and they say they don't want the Salesman Guild to show up. I would think that they would, because that would mean that they are found by somebody who can help them get back. But maybe they're all thugs like the Spung. But the crew is much more willing to give up Thelma, and I don't know how long they would have been with Thelma by the time of this episode's story takes place. But Thelma feels bad about it. Harlan kind of goes in because Harlan has explained crying to Thelma earlier in the episode, and so she says, "This is when I would be crying," or something like that. But they never resolve obviously they don't give up Thelma. They find a way out of it. Harlan wins at 3D chess or whatever that game is, and they don't actually give her up. But they never apologize for being willing to give her up or anything like that. So yeah, but it's a pilot, and there's a lot of things that aren't necessarily in continuity with the rest of the series. But that seems like because the writers seem to be saying, well, she's almost as human as they are. She has feelings too, but they don't actually feature any resolution to that. But Thelma is also a machine, not human, so maybe she just forgets or reasons that they feel bad and they went to all the trouble to break the contract so that they wouldn't have to give her up. I don't know. Catalina's scream is also different from in the main series. It's a sonic blast, and it's represented by an echoey, vibrato-y, high-pitched note and wobbly visuals on the screen. In the pilot, it is very amusingly a dog whistle, and there's a very quick cut to the image of a dog constellation, Canis Major, Canis Minor. I didn't have time to read it, but and the constellation, the dog constellation, howls. So that's funny. I think that's that for my notes on the pilot. So then getting on to the first episode, where the Krista, I finally looked it up. I've seen this show many times. I finally looked up the Earth teacher that the Krista is named after, and the person's name is Sharon. First name is Sharon Krista McAuliffe, and she was a teacher and an astronaut from New Hampshire who was on the Space Shuttle Challenger, which was a famous disaster of a launch. And so it's a nice tribute. And Thelma gives this information to the crew. And there are all sorts of questions like why does the Krista approach a school? Maybe because it was named after a teacher. Maybe it thinks of itself as a teaching vessel. I don't know if they ever find out. It was built by aliens because we see one of the aliens in the last episode of the first season. So it's an alien ship, but it's named after a human. It has books, which we find out in one of the next episodes, the second or third. We find out it has old Earth books. So the mystery of the Krista is very wrapped up in human history. We just don't find out much about it, or maybe I will find it this time through. They get the Bova being from Uranus joke out of the way. One of the first lines is "I'm the butt of every joke" when she says Bova from Uranus, and then they don't really make a thing of it for the rest of the series, to my recollection. So they had to do it, and they did it, and they got it out of the way. Let's see. The first episode is called "We Got to Get Out of This Place." It refers to the kids. They're not going to get their field exam, their field study. They don't get to go out in space and do what they've been training to do, and they're sad about that. So when a ship approaches and they get the chance to go on it, they just do, and they bond with it, and they get what they want ultimately. And at the end of the episode, Commander Goddard says he was only going to be their teacher for a few more weeks, and then he was going to be back out in space with the crew, and instead and they fill it in back out in space with the crew. So he gets what he wants. It's the perfect, I guess Davenport isn't that happy about it, but the rest of them are. She says that she had theater tickets, and that makes me very curious what she was going to see. Is it a revival? She seems to, as so many, same with Star Trek, a lot of cultural references of these future space age things. They are still a fan of the classics, so chances are she was going to see Death of a Salesman rather than some play from... And also, the Star Academy is in the neighborhood of Pluto, I think. So where's the theater? Is it a school production? uh, unanswered questions. But that got me very curious this time around. Um, let's see. The ship, I really love. I think the Krista is my favorite science fiction spaceship. It looks like a kind of a sad bird fish hybrid type thing. It looks like a fantasy bird fish hybrid. And from the wings that are kind of fins, not like the spider from the pilot episode. Um, I have trouble describing it, but it's a beautiful thing. The CGI in this often looks like video games quality, but uh, the ship always looks beautiful, and I love that it's got veins, and I just love the look of it. The aliens who built it look kind of like birds too. They have a beak. It looks like the Eagle Muppet from the Muppets. Sam the Eagle is what the Lumanian looks like in that episode. Um, so it establishes that these are kind of misfit space cadets, and they obviously go on to the spaceship. They shouldn't. They're acting like kids, and they've all got to grow because all characters at the beginning of a story they have to grow. But the pilot episode, the first episode really establishes them as petulant kids, especially Harlan Band, and and people who need to learn to work together. And then, of course, Goddard and Davenport need to learn things too. I'm not sure what Davenport's arc is, but maybe I will see it as I watch these episodes. But like Harlan needs to learn to work with Radu. Radu needs to learn confidence. Catalina, they think that she's a little crazy because she's talking to someone that they can't see. Yeah. And what theater show was Davenport going to see? I think it's a great first episode. The introduction of Thelma, I love. I love Thelma's character. It's a bit quirkier than it is in the pilot, and she's one of my favorite performances in the pilot. By the way, Davenport is played by an actor named Tamsin Kelsey, who in everything from Stargate 1 to The X-Files, Poltergeist, The Legacy, but to me, she's most familiar from the movie Magic in the Water. And then in the series proper, she's played by, let me see if I can find, there'll be plenty of time to, I think Carrie Lawrence is the name of the actor who plays her in the series proper. And I will name the actors throughout based on the character's importance in this or that episode. So the plot of the episode, basically, the ship pulls away once it has not just the kids but also the adults. The ship pulls away on its own, and then they accidentally set it going at light speed, and they accidentally fly through the white circle. I wonder what the ship had in mind when it showed up to pick them up, and they got on, and then it took off, and then they kind of mistakenly took over control of it. I wonder what the ship was going to take them to do. But very good episode. The next one, Who Goes Where? Now, one thing I've been reading the trivia and the notes from Peter David from the Lost in the Space Cases website, and I will share things that are interesting from there. One of them is that Nickelodeon didn't want to do that first episode. They didn't want a "This is how it begins" episode. They wanted to start in on the action, hence the pilot starts in on the action, and then explain the background at a different time in a different way than just this is the origin, this is how it started. And the episode that explained it was going to be a focus on Catalina breaking the fourth wall and explaining to the viewing audience, and then in flashbacks it would play out, this is how we got here, a couple episodes in. But the first episode was actually going to be what ended up being the third episode, and the second episode was supposed to be the actual second episode was supposed to be the third episode, which was supposed to be the second episode when there wasn't going to be that first episode origin. I don't know, it's tangled up. But the second episode is about Radu brings a teddy bear in from outer space. It's out just floating in outer space because Rosie wants to see what it is. She's curious about it, so he goes out and gets it as one of the older kids, and it makes him sick. And there is, I don't want to go into it here, but if you go to the spacecasestv.com and go to the Who Goes Where episode, go down to the trivia, and it explains the whole history of the teddy bear, which was in an episode of Babylon 5. The name of the aliens who made the bear into a booby trap is a reference to an actual person who it's complicated, and I don't want to read it verbatim off the website, but it's worth looking at. And this starts to establish the characters. You know, they had to get the plot in motion in episode 1, so this starts to establish that Bova is a snarky one. That Radu is very, very strong. It does a good job of emphasizing that Radu is very strong. I don't know how clear the speaking out in the hall is, but if you can hear it over me, then I apologize, but I don't think you can. It establishes that Thelma is kind of like Google. They just ask her anything, and she knows, except when occasionally she blames the crack in her jewel for missing information. Let's see. I've since learned that it is common to give female superheroes the power of screaming really loud, but Catalina was my first. So, and I thought it was a great superpower, and I still do. And it establishes Rosie's medical interest. And Rosie is the meekest of the kids, and has the most adorable Canadian accent. And she is the hero of this episode. Radu gets referred to as a hero because he ultimately saves one of his classmates from being sucked out into space because he's strong enough to do that. But he also put that classmate in danger, and so he was just fixing his thing, but he gets referred to as a hero for doing that. Rosie discovers why Radu has gone crazy. He got sick from touching the teddy bear from space, and she fixes him with her healing heat powers. And there is kind of an arm wrestle that they do, which is, if he's supposed to be so strong, I guess it's because she's glowing and very, very warm that she gets a little power from that. But she's the smallest, meekest of the space cases, and she holds her own physically against the most physically powerful of the space cases. And but you know, it's science fiction, so that can happen. But she's the hero. She fixes him, giving him the ability to rescue Harlan from the danger that he put Harlan in. But Harlan gets called a hero. I think she gets some credit, but not as much as perhaps she could. And then Catalina doesn't get to be established as the genius. It takes a while to establish her as a genius because it implies, and they didn't commit to the actual existence of Susie for a long time, but it implies that she gets her best ideas from her friend who's not there. So either she's crazy enough to have an invisible friend, or the person's actually there and has all the good ideas that she then translates to the Krista. So it takes a while to establish that she is actually a brilliant person. She's my favorite character, as I will get into at later time. But in this episode, the first kind of character establishing episode, she just acts goofy during doing her Saturnian festival dance the whole time and singing. And so not the best introduction for her, but maybe there was nothing else for her to do in the episode other than dance around Goofy. And then they end the episode with a little dance party. Great Rosie episode. Not so great as a Catalina episode. And this is the episode where Davenport brings all the old classic books from the cargo hold of the Krista to the students. And Bova wants one on science, and Rosie wants one on medicine. And if these are physical books, and they're traveling through space, and these are old-looking books. They look like books from the 19th century. Probably they're not the best things for the students of that period. Whatever date that is in the future, it's hundreds or thousands of years in the future. Maybe they shouldn't be reading the books from the 1800s. They probably have better sources, but it's a nice-looking visual. And I have very little to say about episode 3. A Day in the Life, which was supposed to be the first episode and establish what it's like from day to day on the Krista, except that I think I finally know which of the Verna Herna is Bill Mumy and which is Mark Hamill. And I figured it out before I read in the trivia. It says that Bill Mumy, because he was on the show Lost in Space, behind him is the robot from Lost in Space, the actual robot, I guess. And so I saw that, but I had already decided after years of debating that Mark Hamill is the one on the other side. not in front of a robot. But it's very hard because they're both completely covered in dark gold makeup. Their heads are covered in antenna-bearing helmets, Darth Vader helmets, kind of, and they're both speaking with kind of nasally Beatles accents. So it's been very difficult through all these years, but I always knew one of them was Mark Hamill, and I think I know which one it is now. The plot, of course, is that the Fernaherna, Bill Mumy and Mark Hamill, are going to blow up the Krista because it flew into the wrong space, and Thelma intercepts the message where they say, if you don't leave, we will blow you up, but she can't get the message because she has to stick to Davenport's schedule, and it's kind of a don't overschedule your life or your kids message. Let's see. Harlan claims, well, they're supposed to keep a diary. In addition to keeping to a schedule, they also have to keep a diary about their day. And at the end of the episode, end of the day, both Harlan and Catalina say into their diaries, I was the hero of the day. But Catalina really was, because she is the only one who actually listens to Thelma when she loses her voice briefly, and finds out about the danger, and then she gets her voice back in time, but only after Thelma manages to guess from her charades that she has a plan to disrupt the tracking signal on the bombs that are chasing the Krista with her sonic blast. So Rosie is hero number 1, Catalina is hero number 2, and both times their male classmates claim or are given the glory of the day. So, but that's just life. At least it was in the mid-90s, and maybe it still is, but hopefully won't be for long. And I don't blame the writers for this, but it's just funny that it works out that way. Nobody witnessed, in Rosie's case, nobody actually witnessed her curing Radu. He just was cured and rescued Harlan, and that's what everybody knows. Maybe they heard that she cured him, but yeah. So I'm gonna say that's that on these episodes. I love the first one. The second and third, they're good, and I like to watch them, but they're not like my favorites. 4, Spung at Heart, is one of my favorites, and that will be next time. And I don't have a Space Cases themed sign off, and so I'm just going to say bye for now. But I hope that Animorphs is getting a movie. That's part of the reason I did what I did. Space Cases is still pretty obscure, and it'll probably still be pretty obscure after I do this whole thing, but hopefully those people out there who, like me, love this show will enjoy a little bit of discussion from me, and maybe they will even leave comments with their own opinions about the various episodes or the various characters. That would be nice.